Well, good evening. Good to have everybody with you. This is the last one of these for the season. So if this has been an angstful or troublesome experience, you're in luck. It's the last one. If this is something that you've enjoyed, I'm so sorry. This is the last one of the season. But I definitely appreciate everybody being here, or if you're watching this on recording, I definitely appreciate you watching it on recording. I know our lives are busy and I like to be able to give people an option. So let me start by bringing up my other screen. Share said screen. There we go. Parent conversation, prep meeting, session 6. Confirmation 1 students. Let's begin with a unique prayer in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Lord of all pots and pans and things, since I've no time to be a great saint by doing lovely things, or watching late with thee, or dreaming in the light of dawn, or storming heaven's gates, make me a saint by getting meals and washing up the plates. Warm all the kitchen with thy love, and light it with thy peace. Forgive me all my worrying, and make my grumbling cease. Thou who didst love to give men food in room or by the sea, accept the service that I do it unto thee. Amen. A very wonderful man named Brother Lawrence wrote that. In the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. It's included in your teens conference this time around. So those of you who've been here before, and I'm going to trust that by now everybody here has been here before at least once, the agenda hasn't changed. So let's go to it. This one is on relationships. I think this is one of the more critical lessons, because I think this is an area in our secular society, our regular world, if you will, that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of moving parts, and the kids get a lot of mixed messages on this one. So it's important that they hear about relationships from a Catholic perspective. So our objectives, number 1, is to establish the purpose of relationships, and that the most important relationship in our lives is with God. Second one is to teach candidates how to make good decisions in the area of relationships. And I bet you there's a lot of you that are nodding right now, because this can be a real challenge with teenagers. I raised 3 of them. And objective number 3, demonstrate that developing healthy relationships is essential to the life God is calling candidates to live. And it is so true, as I'm sure you agree. If your kids have good friends, your kids will turn out okay. And if they have a good relationship with God and have good friends, they're well on their way to success. So the first video that he showed, usually this first video, the ones that end in 0.0 have a really poignant point to them. This is a story, he starts out by telling a story of 2 men that are out in the woods, and suddenly they start to be chased by a bear. And you know, a minute into running away from the bear, one of them sits down and starts putting on a better pair of shoes, taking off the hiking boots and putting on a better pair of shoes. And his friend says, "What are you doing? We're having enough trouble outrunning this bear." And he looks at him, he says, "I don't need to outrun the bear. I need to outrun you." And his point of this story is that true friendship is incredibly rare. Unfortunately, we do have too many people that we call friends that would prefer just to outrun us and let us get eaten by the bear as a way of saving their own skin. So he goes to great lengths to talk about how important it is to get your relationships right. And so a couple of the questions that I ask, here, just to make sure these kids watch the video, is, according to Matthew Kelly, why did the first young man put on his running shoes? And unfortunately, it's to outrun his friend. I'm hoping the kids get that message. Not everybody's your best friend. So the second video up, what is the purpose, begs the question of what is the purpose of all relationships? And Matthew Kelly points out it's to have other people who can help us get to heaven, and other people for us to help to get to heaven. So it really is about salvation. And you know, those of you who are married know that your job as a spouse is to get your spouse to heaven. And your spouse's main job is to get you to heaven. And secondary purpose is to get your children to heaven. And this is really what it's about. So in our relationships, we should all be willing to help people get to heaven. Another way of looking at it, putting it more in kid language, would be people to help us become the best version of ourselves. You don't want to hang out with somebody who's not helping you become the best version of yourself. Choose your friends wisely. I'm sure you've said this to your children. I know I said it to mine. Choose your friends wisely. And he points out, listen, fun is great. I mean, you got a lot of, let's call them acquaintances that you might call friends. They're a lot of fun, and that's great, but it's not enough. We need to surround ourselves with good, strong relationships, people that help us become the best version of ourselves. So one of the questions that we ask is, what are you pretending not to know about your current approach to relationships? So a lot of, and he goes into this in the video, there's a lot of people that just go on and on with these relationships, mostly because they're afraid of getting out of them. They know they're not good for them, but they don't want to be the one to break it off, type of thing. But I think most kids are pretty smart, and they know that there's certain people they shouldn't be hanging out with. The next video, choose your friends wisely. And he talks about there are 5 different groups, if you will, in your life, 5 different people in your life, that those relationships you should be very concerned about. First one is your friends. You know, what your friends do, you're likely to do. If you, I had a bunch of friends in high school, I know that we were in a competition to see who could get better grades. How geeky was that? But we all got great grades. So if your friends like to do nothing but sit around and smoke pot, then guess what you're going to do? So choose your friends wisely. Parents, the relationship with your parents is so important that Deacon Stephen included a conversation with your parents as part of the confirmation program. And it's the 4th commandment of the 10. Honor your parents. It's an incredibly important relationship in your life. Next one up is marriage. And there are a lot of things that, and he gives a nod to all the things that attract someone to a spouse. You know, looks are important, personality is important, but at the end of the day, character matters more than anything else. Character being, the definition of character being the decisions that someone makes. If you find yourself in love with someone who makes really good decisions, that's a great catch. The next one would be community, and he zeroes right in right away onto your parish community. Your parish community needs you. And this is one of the emphases I'd like to place on confirmation kids. Your parish community needs you. You're not the future of the church. You're the present of the church. And we need you as part of our community now. So I encourage all these kids, you know, right after confirmation, what do you want to sign up for? What do you want to do? You know, is there something that we're currently doing that you want to jump in on, or is there something we don't do that you want to start? You know, we need your energy and your love and your friendship in our community. And then the last one, but it's really the first one, is God. Until you get this relationship right, none of the others will fall into place. So trying to really impress upon the kids, get your relationship with God right, so that the friends, parents, marriage, community aspects of your life will fall into place. And then the next question is a challenge question, really, to the kids. Are your friends helping you become the best version of yourself? I mean, I can't ask it any more blunt than that. And the reverse is equally as important. Are you helping them become the best version of themselves? Are you the friend that nobody should be hanging out with? So these are critical thinking things for the kids, and I hope that they don't gloss over this one quickly, because I think this is a truly important aspect. And then that's all in the first conference. Now we're jumping to the second conference, and there's a big gap between them, by the way, because of Easter and the school vacation week. So you got plenty of time between the first and the second. This conference is now open. The last one is now open, or the session's open. The first conference opened, and then the second one's after Easter, and then it'll close up. May 2nd is the deadline for all of this stuff. So the next one is, what is love? Another totally misconstrued, misunderstood phrase, mostly because English does a terrible job with the word love. I love pizza and I love you use the same word. So Matthew Kelly drives in, God is love. And God's vision of love is a beautiful, selfless, and radical way of looking at things. It's not like what you hear on TV. And I did this, and I can't remember now whether it was for somebody in Confirmation 2 or earlier in Confirmation 1, but I included the Greek versions of the word love from Greek, and it means 4 different things, or 4 different ways of looking at this. Just because I think English is a disservice to the word love. And he tells a story, and I printed it out for the kids on the web page, because I thought it was beautifully written, number one, and anything I can get the kids to read that is beautifully written is a help. It starts out, there are 2 seas in Palestine, and he's talking. It's kind of a poem, but it doesn't rhyme. The river flows into 2 seas. One of them it flows into, and it's the Sea of Galilee, and it's this wonderfully rich, full of fish, and this water flows in, it's full of life, and it has tributaries, and I've been there, so it's a beautiful thing to see. The other one flows into another sea that's full of salt, not a thing lives there, and it gives nothing back, and that's the Dead Sea. The point is that love is not a mutual give and take. Love is about giving and receiving. There's no take in love. Love is a giving thing. And if someone gives it to you, you're on the receiving end, and it's not meant to hold on to, it's meant to be passed on. And so he uses, the writer of this uses this idea of the 2 seas in Palestine. And it's very, very well done. Please look on the website, if you will, and take a read through it. Or if you have a copy of the book, it's in the book as well. So one of the questions that I ask the kids is, who models selfless love in your life? Hopefully it's one of you. I think I'm going to get a whole lot of, my mom, my dad in that, but hopefully there are other people too in these kids' lives. These kids have tough lives. They're pulled all over the map. And to recognize selfless love in another human being is a real challenge at their age. So I hope they can see that in somebody. And if they can't right now, I hope they do eventually. Next video up is called Your Quest for Love, different types of love. The part that he's getting at here is, it kind of reads through 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind. Half of you had this at your wedding. And he writes it all out, reads it all, and he challenges people to replace the word love with your own name. Are you speaking the truth? John is patient. John is kind. Is that you? So that's the kind of person you want to become, that is that giving and not taking person. So one of the questions I ask them is, in what ways have you gone looking for love in the wrong places? Sounds like a song, but I kept it just the way it was written in the book, without kind of messing with it a little bit, because I just like to see what the kids put up there. I hope they're not going to constantly think of romantic love, which is what we want to try to derail them from thinking about. That's more of a feeling. As I think on the next slide, yes, love is a choice, not a feeling. Yes, there is romantic love. we're not going to deny that, but true love, unconditional love is a choice, and not a feeling. So who you choose to love will determine just about everything. And he goes into some stuff about laying down your life and brings Jesus into it, of course. Who or what are you willing to lay down your life for? And so it's getting the kids to think about, okay, what is worth laying my life down? Is there a person, cause, whatever? What do I love? What really motivates me? Hopefully it's God. So those are some wonderful videos. I thoroughly enjoyed watching these again just recently, and I hope your kids do too, and I hope you do as well. So the conversation with your friends, the last one they have to have, well, there's the last two they have to have. The first one is they prepare for their call, the things they got to think about. What's the best friendship decision you have made in the past 12 months? Tell your friends. I decided to get rid of a friend. I decided to pick up a friend. I, corrected a friend's behavior. I decided to listen to the advice of a friend. It could be a million things. But just think about it. I'm getting them to think about their relationship with their friends. How does your best friend help you become the best version of yourself? Oh, please, dear Lord, have a great answer for that. If it's your best friend, they sure better be helping you become the best version of yourself. And tell your friends what your friend does. So, and then after you've had that discussion and heard that from one or more people, what are some of the decisions your friends made lately about their friendships? And just kind of talk about those. What are some of the ways your friends have helped them become better versions of themselves? Hopefully they hear a mixture of things. My friend did this for me. My friend did that for me. Oh, my friend didn't do that for me. Oh, that's really cool. I think I'll do that for somebody. Again, we're feeding the machine here of getting how the kids understand each other. Conference 2, last one of the season. What is the one new thing you learned about love from this conference? So hopefully they're gonna be able to look their friends in the eye and talk about love. Tell your friends, what did you learn? Hopefully it's love is a choice and not a feeling. That's a important thing to learn. Who loves you in the way God envisions love? So they have to understand how God envisions love, and then start to think about who in their life really loves them that way. I'm sure their parents are on that list, but I'm curious to see if they can come up with anyone beyond you guys. And then after your call, similar things other than your own. What new things did your friends learn about love? I don't want to hear them repeat their own thing. I actually had a kid submit the conference this morning at 8:41. It went online at midnight last night. How he got a small group done in a conversation with his parents, but he did claim that he had a whole conversation with his parents and a whole small group thing. So that's the part that I kind of twitch at, is when they go and answer these questions without actually having these conversations, without the insight that comes from you guys, the parents, and other kids their age. After hearing about people who love your friends in the way God envisions love, how did their stories make you feel? I love to ask that one. How did that make you feel? So talk about it. Then the important part for you parents, your parent may have told you about a former friend of theirs that was not a good influence on them. Some of you have gone, oh, I got that friend. What impressed you most about their story? Again, I don't want to hear the story. I want to hear what impressed you. That your parent had the fortitude to say, this isn't working out. We can't be friends anymore. Or, I just had to let this person go live their life and move on. So if there's somebody that you don't mind telling your child about, please don't have it be their other parent. That wouldn't be cool. But the second one that you might choose from is your parent may have shared how their spouse or closest friend helps to make them the best version of themselves. In other words, so who's your friend that really helps you become the best version of yourself? Tell your kid about that. That'd be awesome. I hope a lot of you pick that one. because I really want to hear the kids learning something about this person really helps me become the best version of myself. So I think that's a great one. And then the last one for this conference, your parent may have told you how their relationship with God supports all their other relationships. If that's you, and I hope it is, please tell your children how much your relationship with God helps support all your other relationships and helps you understand them. And the last conference that you have to do this year, your parent may have told you about someone they know who models selfless love in their life. Maybe you can think of somebody right away who is so selfless in your life, and shows that love to you and to others. How might their story encourage you to love more selflessly? I want the kids to take something out of that themselves. You know somebody, you tell them about it, now they want to model it for someone else. That's the idea. Your parent told you about the virtues that they are feeling, most importantly to healthy, that your parent told you about the virtues that they feel are most important to healthy relationships. So virtue being a good habit. So the good habits that they feel are most important to healthy relationships. What they told you make you rethink one or more of your relationships? I do a little bit of chipping away at some of the unhealthy relationships here, and hopefully the kids get the message that unhealthy relationships are, well, unhealthy. Your parent told you why they feel that love is much more of a choice than a feeling. And please, you don't need to avoid the fact that romantic love, that there's absolutely such a thing, but they say the average romantic love relationship lasts about 3 years, and then after that, you're in a new phase of the relationship, and that's where love being a choice becomes much more critical. You're choosing to love someone. So how did what they say make you feel? So have that conversation with them. So I think these are some really powerful conversations to have about relationships, and maybe your relationship pros, maybe your relationship not so pros. Choose what feels right to you, and just and talk to your candidate about that. And they'll appreciate it, believe me. So reminders, many thanks to all the parents that have tried to get their kids caught up. I've seen a lot more coming in rapidly for that. Please continue to read your candidate's work. A lot of it's fantastic. I don't remember the name of the kid that did the thing this morning, but I'm hoping the parent looks at it and goes, how can you be talking about a conversation you and I had when we didn't have that conversation? So please read these things. Some of your kids do great jobs, and I hope you're darn proud of them. You tell them so. But others are still, little effort or little interest. I doubt those parents are on this call. Now we're up to about 30% of kids that have tried the Works points. Some of them are slamming it. I can tell they spend all of about 5 minutes on it, and they get 2 points for 5 minutes work, which is great because they're getting it. Most kids are actually getting these Works points things. If your kid hasn't tried them yet, they're really easy, and it's way easier than, you can't get 2 points doing community service until you'd spend 2 hours. I'm giving you a shot at 10 minutes worth of work for it. And the kids are getting something out of it. Some of them are really doing really, really well. I'd say the majority are. So it's great. I think the whole concept for those who have tried it is great. Some of them are just allergic to trying. I don't know what it is. So please stick to the 20 activities. That'll be great. This is the end of the year. So the deadline is May 2nd. We have a lot of work to do to get ready for next year. Religious ed is going through some changes, and we need a lot of planning for next year. You guys that are on Confirmation 1 got an email from me asking you to fill out a survey. I've gotten a lot of surveys in, which I appreciate. If you haven't done it, please fill out the survey. That would be wonderful. March 28th, it's on the same form that software that I build the lessons on, and I can put a termination date. So at midnight on March 28th, it turns into a pumpkin, and I have to go do all the data calculations. And we want to put together the best program we can for the kids next year, while we still understand that we're not sure where we're going to be pandemic wise, which is I am so fed up with COVID. If I ever hear that word again after this is over, it's going to be too soon. So anyway, by all means, try to get everything in. May 2nd would be awesome. I know that some kids are playing this horrible catch up. But I hope you're able to do that. Let me, I'm gonna hit my exit thing here so I can stop share for just a second and see if I've got any. I have one person in the chat. Have the leaders reviewed the points with the kids? I keep asking my daughter if she's done any, and she looks at me like I have 10 heads, but seriously. The works points, everything that's submitted, you should get a copy of. So if you know the email, they're putting your email in there. The works points, I had to calculate 2 different ways, and I don't want this to sound like I'm beating up poor Mr. Gullo, who did an absolutely awesome, phenomenal job at this job over the last several years. But I have yet to get a lot of information from what happened before I started this program. So for you guys, you're just starting now, so you're all on my program, and I do keep track of all the points. As I get an email every time they submit, and I have a spreadsheet, and I put in their points. So some of the kids are knocking the leather off the ball. I've got 3 kids that are about to finish, and they're all C1s. So it's, you know, they're confirmation 1 kids that are going to blow it out of the water and do all their work points for the whole year. So I think it's great. Some of them are really into it, which I appreciate very, very much. You know, if you have a specific question, don't all email me if you can avoid it. But if you do have a specific question about how many points, for the C1 kids, they're all on my spreadsheet. The C2 kids, I've got a mixture. I've got the Mr. Gullo sheet, and I've got the my sheet. And unfortunately, his life got a little out of control, and I didn't get a lot of stuff, you know, that he and I had hoped to get together. So we have 2 different piles, and it's kind of a pain. But anyway, do students need to have their sponsor? They should be picking a sponsor now in C1. The form is online. If they know their sponsor, they know their contact information, and they can pick their confirmation name. They should go on and fill out that form. It's a link on pretty much all the pages in the confirmation section. Please do so. That'd be awesome. Then you don't have to worry about it next year. Can you change if something happens? Of course. Right now, I'm not worried about the C1 sponsor forms or anything. I'm terribly worried about the C2 kids because I only have like half of them, and that's really becoming it's going to become a real big problem in just a few weeks. So please, if you know your sponsor, just fill out the form and pick a confirmation name. How to fill it all out, it's all in there. And I did a video on it as well. So all that information's there. So please go for it. So, all right, great. I do appreciate all those questions, and I appreciate you all being here. Anybody who has to run, feel free to run. Other than that, I'm going to jump into a little thing I like to call Morality 101, which is everything they never taught you about morality and you were afraid to ask. And I'm going to rip through it because actually I cut out 2/3 of this material and it's still too long. So I used to teach morality in a Catholic high school. So anyway, so I narrowed it down in topics. Well, first, let's talk a little bit about the dignity of the human person. This comes from the 1st chapter of Genesis, right at the beginning of the Bible. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the tame animals, all the wild animals, and all the creatures that crawl on the earth." God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So we are made in the image and likeness of God. That dignity goes through. Now we move into the New Testament. Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. So we see this seamlessly moves right into Jesus from the Old Testament to the New Testament. But the biggest question I always get is, well, what do you mean? We look like Jesus? No. When I say we are made in the image and likeness of God, here's what I mean. We are God enabled humans to share in God's own life. He did not enable that in any other creature, just in human beings. We both God and human beings have the ability to think and reason. Thinking, other animals have. Reasoning, not as much. Ability to choose, in other words, the gift of free will, something that was uniquely given to human beings. The ability to share with others God, share ourselves with God. Other creatures don't have a concept of God. Some of them are good sharing with each other, but there's a lot of response, if you will, in other creatures. Ability to enter into covenant, which is to make an agreement there are covenants with God, covenants with each other. The ability to take responsibility. God takes responsibility for his creations, and we take responsibility for our actions. We are both God and us, or human beings, are made out of love, for love, to love. Great phrase. We both have the capacity to grow, although God never changes, but he made us with the capacity to grow in wisdom and whatnot. Spiritual beings, we're both spiritual beings with an immortal soul. Jesus had an immortal soul. Jesus had a human soul, an immortal human soul. Incomparable dignity, value, and worth. Freedom is something I do apologize for whipping through this material. But because there's so many things that I would love to be talking about. By the way, I did a little Morality 101 session. So if you go online and look for my Lenten series, if you didn't tune into that, I do one on making Christian decisions, I call it, which goes into some of this material and a lot more, and is probably a little more entertaining than the rapid fire I'm going to go through this. Freedom is the power rooted in reason and will. In other words, we think it through and we will to do it, to act or not to act, to do this or that, and so to perform deliberate action by one's own responsibility. So freedom always includes responsibility. By free will, one shapes one's own life. Human freedom is a force for growth and maturity in truth and goodness. It attains its perfection when directed toward God, our beatitude. Freedom is not licensed to do whatever you want. We're talking about a freedom free from the burdens, if you will. If we direct our lives to God, we make good decisions that help all of mankind and worship God. We have true freedom. There are two kinds of freedom: external freedom, freedom from factors outside of ourselves, and internal freedom. Some of us feel internally not free sometimes. There are certain choices that we make. This is why we love the sacrament of reconciliation. We can get a clean slate going. So a little bit more about responsibility, because true freedom always involves taking responsibility. Those people who have lots of trouble taking responsibility turn out to be the ones with the least amount of freedom, even though that seems counterintuitive at first glance. First up, talking about emotions. Emotions are morally neutral. In other words, you didn't commit a sin if you felt like hitting somebody on the head. You only committed a mortal sin if you hit somebody on the head. So feeling like you want to, that wasn't the sin. Hitting them, that's the sin. So, but there are some degrees to that. If you're, it's one thing to notice someone that you're sexually attracted to and go, and then keep walking. There's another thing to follow her all the way down the block and around the corner, and just constantly looking and not touching. There's still something wrong there. So, but we also have this idea of law. There are many elements of law, and I apologize again for jumping around. Elements of law. Law is a reasonable thing. We're going to talk in just a few minutes about the natural law, the law that God puts on our hearts. But I want to start with law that we can all agree on. Law is a reasonable thing to have. Law is good, is for the common good. We didn't have traffic laws, people would be plowing into each other left and right, and that's not good. You know, people would die in car accidents left and right if we didn't have stoplights, stop signs, rights of way, you know, things like that. So law is for the common good. There's competent authority that makes the law, so we need to be able to choose our competent authority to make the right laws, and then the law must be promulgated. So we have to make sure that it's being enforced, and that people are paying attention to it and understand it. So the natural law is our participation in the divine law being the law of God. What does God want for us? It's the natural law is our participation in that. So the natural law teaches us what to do and what to avoid. And I'll get into a little more detail a little bit later in this presentation. Natural law is universal, permanent, and unchanging throughout history. And there's lots of scripture that have been written on this. Ezekiel has a great part on it, Jeremiah, some stuff way back in the Old Testament, and lots of mentions in the New Testament as well. It's this law that God places on the human heart. And I'll show you some really cool stuff about that in just a second. But we want to talk about basic morality here. So the morality of a human act depends on the object and intention, and to some degree, the means and circumstances. So for an act to be morally good, the object and the intention must be good. The means usually must be good. We'll get into means. We'll hold means and circumstances down for a little bit. Object and intention. The object is an action. It's not an object like a physical object. So the object, let's say I want a pack of gum because I really like gum, and my intention is to chew gum and I'll feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. But if the object that you're choosing is to steal the pack of gum without paying for it, that's bad. So no matter how good your intention is, I'm sorry, the object just outweighed it. So the idea, and to take it to a much grander scale, dropping 2 bombs on Japan during World War II was designed to stop the war. Great intention, awesome intention, really bad object. It killed millions of Japanese. So it wasn't a moral act, so to speak. Maybe it fulfilled its intention, but it wasn't a moral act because it killed people. Circumstances can only increase or decrease the amount of goodness in something, so it can't change it. So let's say the object is to steal a pack of gum. We go back to the steal a pack of gum, and your intention is to chew the gum. Your circumstances are that someone else drove you into the store, and someone else, kind of said, "Why don't you steal the pack of gum?" That may have contributed to it. Or if somebody said to you, "Don't steal the pack of gum," and you stole it anyway, the circumstances it may have influenced it a little bit, but didn't change anything. So, quick review there. So sources of morality, I just went through the why. Oh, couldn't skip that one. So the process that we can all use is something, and this I go through in that making Christian decisions thing, is the STOP theory. It's a STOP. Search out the facts. Think about all the different facts of something. When I taught this in high school, I used to talk to the kids about going to a party. You're going to a party. What are the facts? Well, there's going to be boys there. There's going to be girls there. There's going to be punch to drink, and marijuana is there too. So these are all the facts that we have to. Now we have to think about various alternatives and consequences. What are the alternatives? Well, I could stay home and watch TV, and I wouldn't get into trouble. Well, that may not be as fun, but consequences. What are the consequences? What if I go and my mother finds out? Oh, then I'm in deep doo-doo. So you got to think about these things before you make a decision as to what to do in choosing this object, that may or may not be moral. We have to think about others. Always, always, always think about others. Stop thinking about yourself and think about how your choices impact others. And then, of course, this is a church environment, so P is pray. So always pray for the guidance to make a good decision. So it's a way of, a lot of times people jump into these, and I know I've sat in debates where people talk about the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima was a great thing and everything, but and there is some debate to be had there. But if we search out all the facts and understand that perhaps from the American perspective, that was the right thing to do, it certainly wasn't from the Japanese perspective. So if we understand all those facts and then think about what were our alternatives, now I'm doing revisionist history here, but what were our alternatives at that time? We believe there weren't any, or at least that was the public story. What were the consequences of this? Think these things through. Who else is it going to affect other than us? And God, I'm sure lots of people prayed about that decision. But anyway, these are kind of ways that we can make good moral decisions. Let's flip again, because again, I'm apologizing trying to get through all of moral theology in 30 minutes or less. Let's talk about conscience, but let's first talk about what conscience is not, because there's a lot of misinformation about what your conscience is. Conscience is not a majority opinion. It is not a feeling. It is not the superego, which is the internalization of cultural rules. We have lots of problems with that these days. It's not a gut instinct. It's definitely not a gut instinct, as you'll find out in just a moment. We do not all have little Jiminy Crickets with cute little umbrellas sitting on our shoulder telling us what to do, Pinocchio. It's not a myth. It really is something. And it's something that we have. So what is it? Moral conscience is an awareness of God's call to be. So we are aware that God is calling us to behave in a certain way. Lots of people go through life unaware of this. Not a well-informed conscience. A good, well-informed conscience is aware that God is calling us to be someone and fulfill a mission. We did, I don't know, C2. You'll do the mission next year. God has a mission for everybody. Awareness of God's call to know and to do good, that is to love. So understand that that's what we're here for. But it is a practical judgment of the intellect. This isn't all theology here. This is really, we're thinking and we're doing the right thing. That's what conscience is about. It's an operation of the intellect. And it becomes something of who we are. So there's another little clever little an acronym here, Seer, S-E-E-R. And this is how conscience works. Same thing we started with stop. We're going to search, instead of search out the facts, this is study the facts. We're going to study the facts of a situation. And then we're going to elect a course. We've looked at everything. Now we've decided, I hate to use the Hiroshima thing, but we've considered all the options, the alternatives, the consequences, who it's going to impact, blah, blah, blah. And we've elected a course of action. Unfortunately, that was to drop a bomb. But we've elected that course of action. The next one is we execute. We actually do what we elected to do. We follow through with that. No second thinking, we follow through. Now it's over. Now we review the decision. Was it a good decision? Now we're back to studying the facts again. And we make corrections throughout our life. We study facts, we elect a course, we do things, we change, we review them, and we make changes. So we're always developing our conscience. We're always forming and informing our conscience. And that there in Catholic teaching, this is very, very important. And this is one of these like little known facts that most Catholics don't know. The Catholic Church teaches us that we have 3 obligations in this area. One is to form our conscience. You must deliberately form your conscience. You must study the facts, elect a direction, choose that, do that action, review, keep reform and informing. So form it by informing it all the time, making better decisions. And this is the one where people miss out on it. And then follow your conscience. Now, I know a lot of people will follow a misformed conscience. That's a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing that they followed their conscience. It is possible to be doing the right thing by following your conscience, but following a misformed conscience. So all three of these are extremely important. Form your conscience, inform your conscience on an ongoing basis, and always follow your conscience. It's a lifelong procedure. But the church calls us to recognize God's call to be, a call to love him and to love others. And if we make our choices based on that, we'll be able to form, inform, and safely follow our conscience. One of my favorite slides, a lot of people get it kind of confused, is the difference between character and personality. If you know who this is, don't yell it out. I'll tell you in just a second. I would start with, let's look at this person's personality. Personality is something that's formed by your genetics and the environment. And look at this guy. Look at that perfect hair. He's got such a lovely haircut. He's got a dimple. He's got a smile. He looks like such a friendly guy. He's well dressed. He's probably very charismatic. In fact, I can assure you he's extremely charismatic. This man had a marvelous personality. Unfortunately, he had a horrendous character. This is a serial killer. This poor guy was convicted of serial rape and murder for all sorts of people, and actually has Ted Bundy. I drew a blank for a second. Ted Bundy had a terrible character, but a great personality. So please, let's not get character and personality confused. People can have great personalities, and this is kind of why I'm using this whole section in this part of what your kids just learned in relationships. You know, your kids might have friends with great personalities, but if they have terrible characters, get them away from them. So the big difference between character and personality. So some of the things that we, and this is just a little more facts and figures about morality. We have something called the Cardinal Virtues. They are temperance, prudence, fortitude, and justice. Cardinal in this case means hinge. It's from the Latin meaning hinge, which is these are the things that everything else pivots on. So temperance, short definition on all these folks, moderation that brings balance to life. So my father's, one of his favorite sayings was moderation in all things, keep a balance in life. Temperance. Prudence, practical wisdom, responsible decision-making, just what we've been talking about for the last few minutes. Fortitude, strength, courage, to stick to the morally right thing to do, even when it's difficult. So a lot of your kids are faced with these situations on an ongoing basis. And we want to help them develop great fortitude so that they have the strength to say no to bad relationships in their lives, people that would take them off track, things like that. And then justice, giving God and neighbor what is due by right, being fair, acting in a fair way. These are great virtues, great virtues, and I'm sure you agree. But there are other virtues. We have the theological virtues, faith, hope, and love, or also known as charity. Faith would be the belief in God and what he has revealed to us. So we believe that God exists, and we believe that what he has revealed to us, starting with the Jewish people and the fullness of his revelation in it by sending his son, Jesus Christ, to become one of us. And hope, but specifically hope, the desire for the kingdom of heaven. We have hope that we will achieve salvation. Keeping that hope alive in us, that we will be chosen to have eternal life with God, is a great virtue. And if you make decisions, will this help me get to heaven? Not help me get to heaven. Good time to stop, search out the facts. Will this get me to heaven? And then finally, charity or love of God above all things. If we always love God and others ahead of ourselves, always a good virtue as well. Sin, there's so many different definitions of sin, and in today's world, unfortunately, pretty much they're all being scoffed at and thrown away, and nobody shows up for the sacrament of reconciliation. Actually, I go often, and there's always a line. So I guess I go to the right place. But these are some of my favorite definitions of sin. Choosing not to love. That's probably my favorite definition of sin, actually. A teacher I used to work with used to say this all the time. Sin is a time that you chose not to love. I love that one. I think that's great. It's an offense against reason, truth, and right conscience. So anytime that you're making a conscious decision, a mortal sin is always a conscious decision that goes against reason. I know I should zig, but I'm going to zag. That's a sin. You know what the truth is, but you're going to go with the not so truth. My conscience says go right. I'm going to go left. Those are sins. Failure in genuine love for God and neighbor caused by a perverse attachment to a certain good. Yeah, I know I should go visit my grandmother, but my buddy's got some beer. I'm going to go over there. Yeah, I think we're in the sin category. An utterance, deed, or desire contrary to the decree of God that governs all creation. Very broad definition of sin. So play around with those, if you will. These slides are on their way to you in about 8 minutes. The person and society. The human person needs life in society in order to develop in accordance with his nature. Certain societies, such as the family and the state, correspond more directly to the nature of man. The family is the basic building block of society. We call it the domestic church, if you will. You are the primary educators of your children in their faith. We are here to support you because you are the domestic church, and everything else builds on top of that. So how important is society? Well, let's ask St. Thomas Aquinas. Back to natural laws, I promise. Natural laws of participation in God's wisdom and goodness by man formed in the image of his creator. Here's the slide that I think is so important. Aquinas gave us 4 categories of goods: life, procreation, sociability, and knowledge. And so these are the inclinations. These are the things that having the natural law inclines us to do. Doesn't demand us to do or force us to do, but inclines us to do, because I'm sure you can all come up with an exception to every one of these. But in general, we all have an inclination to self-preservation. We also have an inclination to preserve the life of another life. If you saw a dog get hit by a car, you're going to run to the help of the dog. You know, and when a loved one is dying, you want to be by their side. You know, if somebody was in harm's way, you want to snatch them out of harm's way. If you yourself, you know, are in harm's way, you're going to try to take yourself out of harm's way and not do things that harm you. Those are all part of this natural inclination. Having and raising children, this one's becoming more and more questionable in today's society, but I think it's a natural inclination of the human being, if dare I use the word mammal, to have and raise children. But it's certainly one of the natural inclinations of being a human being. The third one is knowing the truth or searching for the truth. I did this in my first Lenten seminar this year. We talked about, you know, what is truth? Is there such a thing as absolute truth? We all have this desire to know the truth. Nobody says, you know, could you do me a favor? Could you just lie to me? Because that'd be really great. No one's ever said that. Everybody has a natural desire to know what is the truth. I want to know what the truth is. So this is all part of the natural law. And the last one is living in society. And God knows there are exceptions, these people that live out in the woods forever and ever and whatever. But for most of us, we do want to live in society. We want to be part of a community. And in my work as a hospice chaplain, I used to go in and see a lot of people who weren't exactly what I would call religious. And they didn't want to be religious. And, you know, I respect, you know, their wishes here on their, you know, in their dying days or whatever. But I'd often hear, I don't need a church to have a relationship with God. And I always say, yeah, but it sure helps to have relationships with people in community where you can live out your faith. And I get the occasional eyebrow that would go, yeah, you got a point. So living in society is a really important thing. The church is our moral guide. There's too much to read here. The moral life is a spiritual worship. Christian activity finds its nourishment in the liturgy and celebration of the sacraments. We have the magisterium of the church, which is the teaching authority of the church. So we know what the moral guide that Jesus gave. The church is the preserver of that and looks at things in today's world. And I'm running out of time, so I won't go into gory detail, but my favorite example is test tube babies. Now, I'm sure you've heard of test tube babies. I'm sure you've heard that the church has something against them. And the knee-jerk reaction from so many people is, so what did Jesus know about test tube babies? Well, the point is, Jesus didn't know anything about test tube babies, but he understood basic human morality. So the church, as new things are developed, reflects on those new things that have been developed in human society through the lens of the morality taught to us by Jesus Christ. So things like test tube babies, there are lots of embryos that are created, most of them are destroyed, and only one survives, type of thing. So the church is against the destruction of the other embryos. That's the biggest thing that the church has against it. So if you see what I mean there. So the church is our moral guide. The magisterium helps us understand, in the light of what Jesus taught us, how to understand things in today's world. And then this is my last slide, just in time. The precepts of the church for those who want to do just the minimum in church. Assist at Mass on Sundays and holy days of obligation, doing no unnecessary work on those days. Yes, please, show up for church. The church does call you to be there. You don't have to put anything in the collection plate. We're not after your money. Please just join us, be with us, be part of the community. Confess serious sins at least once a year. I'm sure most priests would recommend you go more often than once a year, but the precepts say once a year would be great. And oh, by the way, it's during Lent, which ends next week. So if you haven't been to reconciliation, run, Forrest, run. And then the next one is receive Holy Communion frequently, at least the minimum during the Easter season. They say we should be receiving at least once a year. This hasn't changed. It used to be people rarely ever went to communion. Then Pius XII came along and here we go. We're going to get it every time we go to Mass. But we're asked to do it at least once a year by the church. Fast and abstain on appointed days, which now are Fridays and Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. Fridays of Lent, that is. Observe the laws of the church concerning marriage and giving religious training to one's children by word, example, and use of parish schools or religious education programs. Longer-winded sentence then. Send your kids to CCD. I hate that phrase, CCD. I always challenge people. If you can tell me what it stands for, I'll let you use it. And the last one is join the missionary spirit and work of the church. Doesn't say go out and be a missionary, but it means live your life in such a way to attract people to Christ. That would be great. So thank you all very much for sticking with me. Let me just hit the button here. Yep, a handful of you stayed on. God bless you. You're all wonderful people. And I hope other people watch me on reruns. I am going to jump because I have the next parent meeting right now. So may Almighty God bless you, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord and one another.